Okay. All right. We are live. How's it going, Dan?
Hey Ted, it's going all right. It's Friday.
It is Friday. Oh, what does the Discover feed for Han to Han Combat look like? Um,
Ooh,
red, it looks like. Fake Muppets show? All right. What is going on? Jeez. Okay, well, again, I'm playing post roulette here. I should probably not do this. Um,
I've got a barn owl.
you've got a barn owl? Okay, good.
Mine is showing a
Um,
barn owl and a red panda.
Um, yeah. So how was your week?
It was. I've been working on a grant proposal.
Cool.
I've been trying to write code that isn't bad.
Uh-huh. And
And
are you using an LLM to help you do that?
I am not. I've not used an LLM at all for this entire thing. I'm
Oh,
going to use it
fascinating.
afterwards to find out how I would have done it, how I could have done it differently or worse. What I am using though is I'm using Simon Willison's blog.
Uh, you're. Tell me more about how you're using Simon
I
Willison's
am I
blog to
am just
post.
reading it all the time to figure out what other models I should be using,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if there is anything I have missed. I have not tried to get a SVG of a pelican riding a bike or anything.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, and and occasionally I'm trying to I needed to put together a budget this week as well. So I was reminded about how much more expensive Claude is compared to everything else.
Yeah. That's because it's a thing that seems to actually work. Uh,
Yes, yes, but what is humanity other than trying to make do with low-paid workers
oof.
compared to?
Oof. Yeah, I suppose that's fair. Uh, yeah.
How about you,
Well, so
Ted? How was your week?
Um, fairly busy. Did a couple of things. Went to an event for um, which episode? Yeah, for Information Magazine. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, so they did a launch for their fourth
HAL
issue.
for HAL
Uh,
9000.
yes. Well, Information Magazine is they joke a. Oh, sorry. This is issue three. They're a quarterly magazine, but thus far they mean quarter century.
Okay,
So
great.
there've only been three issues. They happen to have a copy of the second issue there, which I also grabbed, and it is from the year 2000. And it starts with okay. Remember, let's go back to the year 2000. The
Yeah,
things that were
I'm
happening then.
I'm there.
The first article is titled. Nope, maybe it wasn't the exact first. The second article in here is Scientology hits the web. And remember, the year 2000 is prior to Anonymous,
Yeah,
prior to quite a lot of things, and I think David's
Wikipedia.
Miscavige's.
Prior to Wikipedia, prior to
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah, so they were a bit ahead of the curve there. And so what's interesting about Information is that basically it's a semi-satirical sort of uh,
Semi-satirical
critique.
Wired.
Some of the people who were involved in Wired were involved in this, so it tends
Oh
to be
yeah.
critique about the tech industry. And so, as
Hmm.
one person at this event put it to me, "Wow, this feels like a .com era event because this was at Ministry in downtown San Francisco in a
Hmm.
gallery." And then I was looking around at all the gray hair and being like, "It looks like the .com era too." Um, and what strikes me as interesting about this, in part, is publishing a magazine and doing critique is a kind of Gen X, like postmodernist thing. And the reason why I don't mean that pejoratively, I mean
No,
that
no, no,
as
no.
a generationally placed thing.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I should actually just pull this up on the screen. I was posting about this from theory.net and immediacy. Right, immediate. We'll go with immediately and we'll find the post that way. Nope, that was the core book. This guy social. Um, gosh, come on. Book. That'll bring it up. Nope, it didn't bring it up. I know how to do this. There's only one quote post on this. No, there's another quote post on it. Fuck. Let's see. Um, on sale. Maybe that'll turn it up. It did not turn it up. Okay, 2 seconds. Let's go dig through this. This is actually important. I had a point.
Okay.
Here
Yes.
it is. Okay. Yeah. It's $2. So there's a book that I've been reading recently. I'm only a little bit of the way in, and it's called Immediacy, or the Style of Too Late Capitalism. And the
Okay.
reason why I'm saying like it's really interesting to look at information as a method to form a community and talk about it.
Hmm.
And the millennial experience, I think, is captured pretty well by this book, about immediacy and talking about how we're in the postmodern era. And I felt that for a really long time. The question is, how would you describe that? And Anna Kornblue describes this as um, talking about and the frame for our existence is basically she doesn't say disintermediation, but the frame of disintermediation is actually a key aspect to all the systems that we use, the assumptions that we make about other things, and that actually has knock-on consequences. So Instagram, for example, is a very immediacy kind of driven thing where like it feels like it's you and whoever's producing content, but actually the infrastructure for that is like very big and complicated, and all
Yeah.
of like algorithm stuff is like hidden behind the curtain, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? And there are other knock-on consequences to this, and the removal essentially of critical distance, for being able to critique things or being able to think big thoughts about things. And really, this being one of the major sort of shifts from postmodernism to this postmodern era, where everything has this feel of authenticity, regardless of actually how produced it is or not.
Yes.
And yeah, the book, again, very dense, great thesis. I want to explore more of it. For me, I'm like, oh, this is a thing that finally frames. It pulls together a critical framework for being able to think about all the things that I've been experiencing, all of the like negative externalities that like have pervaded my career, and a whole bunch of these of problems. And so I'm encouraging people to go read that and check it out. I think it's a super interesting and useful book. Um,
It's good that we did things in that order because that explains the post that you wanted me to explain. That helps put it in some better
yeah.
context.
So I think that when we think about mediation and the role of expertise and all these sorts of things, right, and the degree to which we ask for people who are experts to perform authenticity,
Yeah.
that's actually one of the critical key problems of the way that these things show up on the one hand, and what we're demanding of those experts, and an entire different set of jobs on top of the things that we want them to be experts about,
Hmm.
and also the sort of like performative, like just asking questions things about like Joe Rogan,
Hmm.
or like it's funny watching comedians talk about politics and being like, one of the problems with Donald Trump is like he is actually legitimately funny. He does funny things, and some of those things are intentional, some of them are not intentional. But that's a problem, that he actually is in that sense an entertainer, and people
Yep.
want to observe the spectacle, right?
Yeah, we had this
And
problem with Boris Johnson.
yeah. And so, this is like completely reoriented the way that I think about a whole lot of things, and I'm trying to work through all of the consequences of it. But I think it's an important thing to remember and think about when we come to talking about things like community building. What are people there for? What are things that are illusory? And again, this like act of performing authenticity, and the feeling of immediacy is like that kind of like drive towards stuff we talk about in product too, which is um, like why does Libby exist in the convenience ebooks versus going to the fucking library, right? And the like death of third spaces, right?
Hmm.
And how to be intentional about the community building that we're talking about. Again, this is like way too expansive to slam in at the beginning of this, but I think it's interesting to think about uh, what the product landscape is going to look like, and if we can be intentional about product building, uh, with the notion that um, mediation is important, and being intentional about the way that we're doing mediation is actually the thing I was going to say. And that has consequences for expertise. It has consequences for writers. It has consequences for, people who want to produce art, which was the other post in here, which was a video that I snagged off of Threads. I don't know if I have this hooked up to play video right now, but we can retweet this. Here, I'll just go. And so that's why when your post came up, and let me tag this onto our thread here. I am curious to hear more about your thoughts about what you wanted out of this post, and wishing that, actually, do you want to read out your post?
Yeah, I will read out my post as if it's a letter from a viewer in the 80s, because after that we started getting emails from people. On Air Talent used to start getting emails. I'm trying to find it now.
I've got it up on the screen.
Posted it. Okay.
It's also in our show notes.
Great.
Which, despite the way that we're operating, we actually do have show notes.
Yeah, no, we totally do. It's definitely a thing. I said that I wish there was a filter. Wait, okay, no, I actually need to get it up in front of me. Said I really wish that there was a filter for news. So instead of seeing person says things stories, I would see the ones where person does thing or thing happened stories. Because I had just been, I think this was like my mad as hell, one of my frequent, I have these multiple times a day now, I'm mad as hell, I can't take it anymore moments, where I had just seen, at the very least, another headline that said, Donald Trump just said this, or Sam Altman says blah, and the instant kind of autocomplete in my brain is, all right, so this is going to be a news article about what someone has said, and the speech act is considered, the utterance is considered news, and the likely content of the reporting is reporting the content of the speech or the utterance and not anything else around it. So it's like, a thing has happened, someone just said something. And I'm like, I do not fucking give a shit anymore about what he has just said.
Yep.
Right? Like, oh, I see, like Sam Altman just said something. Mark Zuckerberg says that, we don't have enough friends. So, I don't care anymore. I really, really don't care anymore. I mean, I would rather that I did not see things like that, because what I do want to see is, I want, at the very least, for it to be turned around and for it to say, or at least be in the context of something else, right? So if Mark Zuckerberg says that we only have like 3 or 4 friends, and I know that that's a very intriguing headline that will get people to click on something, or even get people mad so that they post about something else, I would like for it to not at least appear that the entire story is being built around that.
Yeah,
there is other valuable context. And Nick Ludlam actually made me think about this a little bit more, because there's clearly a continuum of speech acts where if someone says that they are going to introduce a bill for something, that is slightly different from, Trump saying, well...
Speech acts that reveal intent are occasionally important to talk about. Right?
Yes, and it's contextually dependent. Right. So if they're coming from someone who has a habit of just blurting random shit out, and you cannot discern, there's a history of not being able to accurately predict actions from utterances about intent, then at some point I'm like, well, the noise filter, the noise has just gone way up on this. So it's just something they said. Right.
Well, I'm totally with you on this, because my strategy essentially through the end, I'm like a lifelong public radio listener, and since I was a small child, and that actually has roots in Radio Free Asia and America's America's efforts to propagandize to communist countries for what it's worth, and we can get into that at some point. But as a consequence, like I've just always listened to the NPR News Bulletin until the Trump administration because the signal to noise ratio got so far out of whack. And my solution to that was I'll filter my news consumption, current events, through experts who can contextualize things. So like that's one of the reasons why I really like Pope Hat and Ken White's work and listen to other experts about the way that the country's being governed. That doesn't work in the second Trump administration because of the fact that the change has been so large and so jarring that even the experts are freaking out. And they actually don't know what's going to happen next, although they could talk about things that are going to break, which I think is important. And, you know, I think that organizations like unbreaking.org are super important, or other people who are trying to contextualize changes as opposed to just discussion about changes, or because this I could actually tie this back to the mediation conversation, but we should not at the moment. And just thinking about like what exactly are news products, or what kind of updates. Why am I not following you already on this account? Let's do this. Boop.
That actually makes it a lot easier now. Now I can find it when I'm logged into that account. Good.
There you go. So, I think talking about the collective notion of like, what do people want out of updates that they're getting, or the types of information that they get through news sources directly or that show up in their feeds. It's important to think about, like, are we talking about things that are truth claims? Are we talking about things that are, journalists pejoratively talk about this as stenography of whoever the powerful.
Right. I think one, listening to you talk about it, I think one of the reasons why, and also because I described this as one of my frequent mad as hell, not going to take it anymore moments, is that right now, telling me what someone just said is not that helpful, because the current administration, where they just say a shit ton of things, and when you described it as like even the experts are freaking out in Trump too, in this administration, is because they are saying that they just want to do all of the things.
They're doing a lot of things.
And they are doing a lot of them, but they can't do everything at once. So you are under threat of, oh shit, like they just said another horrific thing that they could do, but they haven't started doing it yet. Mm-hmm. Whereas there are all these horrible things that they are already doing.
Right.
Which are maybe more important for me to find out. It's like, and in that way, I would say that for the need that I have, it is not useful information. It is just reinforcing that, they're just saying whatever they want. Plus, nobody is calling them on it. Plus, they are doing essentially whatever they want.
Well, I think I completely agree. I think it's actually, there's a piece missing to that description, which is, Trump is, him personally, but actually the team that he's built around himself are extremely media savvy.
Oh, yes.
Actually, the media and the outreach is actually a key part to the way that they operate their power, and it's not just an additional or ancillary thing.
Oh no, absolutely.
Right?
I can't remember if we talked about this before, but this is like when Social Security Administration sent out a mass email to everyone.
I got one yesterday.
Saying like Trump saved Social Security, in the big beautiful budget act, and then my friends are saying, "Well, wait, why did you get one?" I'm like, well, because I have a Social Security number. I got one when I came here. I'm special. You just happen to be born with one.
Yeah, yes, and my spouse is an immigrant, so the Social Security Administration also has my email, but I think it's not even just that. I don't mean that they are effective at comms the way the government has been effective at comms in the past. What I mean is they are intentionally flooding the zone, and then seeing which things get a reaction, and then picking which path to pursue. So that is a particular. I think that is. I mean, like you could talk about political communications and people.
Yeah, we could get Dave Karpf on.
Yeah, absolutely. We probably
should get Dave Karpf on.
But what I'm saying is that like the way that the Trump administration operates and the way that the MAGA sphere operates is so tightly intertwined with social media and the types of reactions that they get and the types of communications that they're driving. Anyway, yeah, we should talk about that at some point.
I think there's a and maybe this also ties back to your thing earlier about mediation and mediacy, which is the spinning and spin doctoring was a Gen X thing.
Yeah.
Right. And that did not have the benefit of a feedback loop. And that was all about appearance.
Yeah.
That was all about perception. Whereas what we have right now is we have, direct audience manipulation.
I mean, that makes it sound like it's not just politics, right? Direct,
but it's not. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not like this isn't. I'm trying to think about how, for example, Democrats would do the type of strategic communications that I think the Republicans are instinctively doing and not doing in a planned way. And I feel like if you tried to do it in a planned way, it would be really shit and it would look really terrible and it would be really obvious.
Yeah.
Right? Which comes back to this whole like, okay, well, they're being authentically shit. Like that is a thing that is happening right now, is that they are being authentically speaking their minds in a way that, or they're being authentically transparent in a way that isn't actually authentically transparent, but is performatively authentically transparent.
Yeah, I mean, there's
they are like sometimes right. They're like sometimes saying the thing out loud, but then you also know that there's a bunch of other things that they are not saying out loud.
Yeah.
But yes, there's a lot of in this.
We have challengers appearing.
Two challenges. This is new.
This is the first time.
They're rezzing in.
Hello to our challengers.
Hello.
Hey guys, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Hey Anuj. Hey Ryan. How's it going? I have very happy to have both of you here. I don't know if you guys were following along. We've been bullshitting about politics and communication stuff.
It does have stuff to do with tech.
Politics talk online? What?
Yeah, right, everything. On Blue Sky? No way.
Yeah. There are some Blue Sky screens there, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like all of this, I think it's. I mean, okay, let me attempt a bridge for this, which is
bridge. There it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's that too. And we'll have you introduce yourselves in a moment. But like some of this, people have talked about. I was talking about immediacy and the notion of mediation. And having a critical framework for being able to think about what it is that we're doing here collectively or not. And if you don't have a framework for talking about that, what you're really doing is ceding all of this control to the infrastructure providers who are pretending that they're not actually modifying your experience, which is really what the conversation about algorithms is about at its core. And what's been interesting about the conversation about ActivityPub and at Proto has really been the idea of taking back your feeds or taking back your experience, but like, what the fuck does that actually mean? And like, where, right? Because again, these infrastructure providers, each of these social platforms has a vibe. And people have talked about Blue Sky as a leftist containment dome, or talking about X as being like fucking edgelord, mecha Hitler shit, and like Threads is and what Meta is this whole complicated ball of wax, but like
leading people synthetic chatbots leading people to their deaths because they are elderly and also apparently grooming children.
Oh yeah. Boy.
Yeah, there's that, but like
there's that, but
Instagram and Threads though really explicitly being like, we're not about politics, we're about other stuff, right? Even though like they're absolutely fucking about politics, like everything's about politics.
They changed their mind in January. They're very much about politics now, actually.
Right,
that's true.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
that's changed.
If you want to talk about it,
right?
Yeah.
They acknowledge that some people do want to talk about it, so they should be allowed to. I think
essentially they took the politics filter button and they said rather than opt in, it's opt out.
Yeah.
So cool. It used to be that you had to like go into like deep in your Instagram settings and turn on politics. Now it's on and you have to deal with it. And if you're not liking it, then you can, I believe, go change it after the fact.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So they went
like voting.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I mean, we could talk about other things that are buried deep in the thread settings in a second. But the interesting part about this is that we've got this fractured social media landscape. Each of the platforms has a different vibe. And what's interesting about y'all, and I'm curious about how you feel about this, is like, what happens when we start to connect these spaces together?
Or should we?
Can we connect these spaces together? And should we, right?
Yeah.
With that, like, Anuj, Ryan, I'd love, could you guys talk a little bit about what a new social is in BridgieFed and what you guys are trying to do?
Anuj?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was quite an introduction to and a bridge to what we're talking about.
It took a little bit of work in, but we got there.
No, I love it. It was perfect.
We've been practicing.
Yeah, so we are a new social. We've been around since January, I believe. So it's been half a year now. And Ryan's been working on a service called BridgieFed for way, way longer than that. It's essentially a service that connects ActivityPub, AT-Proto, and the web. And so as it started growing, Ryan was like, wait, this is getting bigger than I thought it is. I think this needs, he was trying to be responsible and he's like, this needs more governance. There needs to be some kind of advisors board around this that can make sure that we're making good decisions. And so Ryan and I connected and began this organization to try and create some governance around it. And so we've been building on top of BridgieFed for the last few months. We launched like a settings page that makes it easier to set up bridging and custom domains and all that kind of stuff over the bridge. And then we announced Bounce earlier this year as well, which is a service that lets you migrate between protocols with BridgieFed being the mediator in between all of that. And we are launching that in beta in just a couple of weeks for people to start using. And I think I mentioned this at Fedicon, but some people have already kind of found where it is and started using it. And it's been fun to see their experience and see how that's been working for them. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been working on. And we've got a lot more in the pipeline. So hopefully we can share more soon.
Awesome. And Ryan, what got you excited or interested? Like, why did you start doing this at all?
Yeah, classic open source thing, just scratching my own itch. So way back in maybe 2012, actually I go back rather than that. When I first started using Facebook, early on when I was just in colleges, yeah, I was maybe a grad student. I liked it, saw the value, but I also kind of got pretty quickly that this is someone else's site. And so I can post stuff there. Like I don't have full control. And so I had a young website at that point, blog. And so I started posting on Facebook, but I basically posted everything on my website first and then copied it to Facebook. And kept doing that for a while. Eventually, when I would write a blog post, for a while, when you in the blog, like in the early blogging space, you write a blog post, people would find it in feed readers or anything else and come comment on it. There would be a conversation, which is great. As social networks rose, you'd start posting your blog post, you then go post a link to it on Facebook, Twitter, wherever, and people would find it there. It's great, but then they would talk about it there too. And so one, the conversations were fragmented, and two, I didn't have a record of them. And so I built the predecessor to BridgieFed, which we now call Bridgie Classic, which uses different social networks APIs, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, a bunch of them, and finds, when you post a link to a post on your own website and brings the comments, likes, reposts, et cetera, back. And they all show up kind of as comments, like the native comments. Originally, I did it with WordPress, but then soon after I discovered the IndieWeb community, which has some protocols and formats for this, specifically microformats in HTML and web mention. And yeah, that got some traction. It's got 6,000-7,000 users, and that community has been great. When I'd been following a lot of the decentralized social stuff for a long time, OStatus, Salmon, Open Social, which was a bit different. Wow. The predecessors to ActivityPub, and especially because a lot of the people I hung out with at that time is people like Brett Flatkin, DeWitt Clinton, Brad Fitzpatrick. They were working on a lot of this early stuff, OStatus, but also OpenID, WebFinger, way back when we were just figuring out what the hell we were doing. And then people in the IndieWeb community like Tatek Shelik, Kevin Marks. And so all of us were poking in different ways and like, how can we make this work? And so when when people started solidifying around ActivityPub, Mastodon was originally on no status. They eventually said, "Oh, let's try ActivityPub," and a few other people too. I saw that I could basically do what I was doing with Bridgie, but Classic, but at a lower level, kind of across the protocols themselves. And I'd also had a lot of Bridgie Classic support for Facebook and then later Twitter, limited or just like lost entirely due to Cambridge Analytica, et cetera. And that was more interesting because often it was communities like ours, one, were very upset with Facebook for, like violating their privacy, Cambridge Analytica, et cetera, sure. And Facebook says, "Oh, okay, well, then we shouldn't do that." And we lose a big chunk of the API. And our same community say, "No, not like that." Well, yeah, okay. And, you get it on all sides. But yeah, so Bridgie Fed in 2017 built and shipped it kind of on a lark, doing this bridging between websites and the Fediverse, but at the protocol level. And kind of, I was using it myself. A few people used it, but it was still pretty small. 2022, Elon and Twitter happened, and suddenly there was more interest. And I went back and looked and said, "Oh, okay, it's running, but there's a lot more we can do here." And then Blue Sky started talking. I was kind of hanging out with them a bit early on when they were, doing ADX, and Jay was doing her survey, and it was interesting. And so I kind of got interested in adding that, and it's gone from there. So
cool. Yeah, so I hadn't realized that App Proto was such a late addition to all your thinking, basically, right? And I'm curious. Sorry, I'm going to nerd snipe for 2 seconds because, like, in some ways, App Proto is like orders of magnitude more complicated to implement than some of these other pieces. And like, you were just like, "I guess we're going to do this," or like.
I mean, yeah, like I feel. When I hang out with people like you two and Anuj and everyone else in the space, like there's so much kind of passion and vision and energy for like, hey, there are a lot of problems with this stuff. We can do it so much better. And like, that'll be good for the world. And I'm there and I love it. Often my personal motivation for doing this is much more prosaic. I'm an engineer. I see a bunch of Lego blocks to say, well, they don't obviously fit together, but like if you angle them just right and tweak this thing and 3D print a little thing, you can jam them together. It'll be ugly and awkward. And Dan knows this very well, but you can jam them together. And so a lot of it is just that, like all of these different protocols are just Lego blocks that you can eventually plug together. Should you? How is a totally different question. Which is why I love hanging out with you all, because you can help me figure that out, help us figure that out.
Yeah, and just to, I think Bridgie Fed is best known for the fact that you can communicate between Mastodon and Blue Sky, which is something that I think is super exciting. I think there's been a lot of interesting interactions, and it's been helpful to see folks who have attached their Mastodon accounts to Bridgie, who are then asserting things about App Proto or complaining about App Proto, and the types of conversations that we can actually have over that. And I think it's awesome. I think it's really fantastic, both to get a sense of what people think about both of these spaces, and also how you can say like, well, actually, no, things have changed, and being able to say this is actually one community, even if it's got different wings, who are thinking about what social spaces could or should be and how we can support them in an open fashion. So, I mean, like just on the basis of that, I think it's really exciting that things like Bridgie exist. I think that people should appreciate how weird you can get with it too, which is like, I can, having done a bunch of things, retweet my Threads account from my Blue Sky account. And the thing I had to do to make all of this work is my Blue Sky account has to follow Bridgie Fed. And then I have to go into my Threads account. I have to go first turn on Federation, which means you got to dig down into the settings. And I think you got to go into settings. You got to go into advanced. You got to go into, I think, Federation or something like that and wiggle some toggles there. We can talk about that whole mess there and why I'm grumpy about it. And once you've done that, if you go find the Bridgie Fed account, you could follow it. And then that immediately starts bridging my Threads account through the ActivityPub Federation into Blue Sky. And like, yeah, it's crazy 3D printed things that you gotta like forced together, but it works. Like,
Yeah.
it's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
I
duct
think
tape and
the
WD.
fun part for a lot of this is that it works at all, not that it's
Yeah.
good or polished. Like
Yeah.
it's always going to be this 80% hack, but like
Yeah.
it's for the people who are ready and want the 80% hack. Like that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that y'all are pushing on this at all is really exciting. And like, okay, so put another way, what are the things that Bridgie and A New Social are supporting? Y'all are the translation layer between Threads and Blue Sky, between Ghost and Blue Sky, and like other products, because they're products who are like, hey, we can adopt ActivityPub. It's a model that we can attach to our existing product stack, whether that's WordPress or Ghost or other folks, and still connect with this wider ecosystem. At the moment, entirely through y'all. Like, there is no other replacement for any of these things. Like, I think that y'all are kind of like singular in being able to set this up, to my knowledge. Do you guys have competitors or friends? I would actually say, because y'all are some of the nicest people I've ever met in social networking so far. So,
Oh, wow. There are other bridges.
Yeah.
I think Ryan would be able to dive in a bit more, but there are other ones. I think BridgieFed is the only one that does Web ActivityPub and AT Proto specifically, right, Ryan? There's some like Nostr to ActivityPub, Nostr to Blue Sky stuff that already
Oh, cool.
exists. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a number that do things in various ways. One of the things I think about a lot is like so for a long time there have been like RSS to Mastodon, reposters. And that's great. That's straightforward. And it's useful, valuable. I think one of the really important parts of BridgieFed that is much less common elsewhere is that it's fully bidirectional. Like everything goes both ways as much as possible. Whereas if you have an RSS to Mastodon, like, yeah, there will be a Mastodon account with the posts, but if you reply or like, nothing happens, right? And so to your conversation earlier today about, okay, like these are communities and people who are interacting with each other, and how do we do that intentionally and like make it work well? Like very basic. Like if it's just one way, that's not a community. It's like broadcast, right? I don't know, Anush, what do you think?
Yeah, no, totally agree. That's like the big thing that I've been trying to push out there to bloggers specifically is this two-way communication. RSS is one way, email can go two ways, but a lot of it is really just people read it in their email inboxes or whatever. It's that two-way communication where your website looks alive that I think a lot of bloggers miss from back in the day. So yeah, totally agree, Ryan.
Just want to pick up on one of the in case out of all the millions of watchers and viewers and listeners we've got, I want to point out for anyone who hasn't quite realized exactly how technically complicated and difficult what it is that you're doing. And I'll use the perspective from the day job of working on giant, 20 to 30-year-old government enterprise systems that do stuff like do healthcare or do food stamps or do social security or anything like that, because they're really old, right? They run on, if you're lucky, they run on DB2 databases. If you're unlucky, parts of them run on Lotus Notes databases still. Everyone always wants the new thing. So what they invariably end up doing is they do like a greenfield build, and then they're like, okay, well, maybe we'll try to use the unfortunately named Strangler pattern to like turn off bits of the old system, the legacy system, and then migrate functionality piece by piece over to the new one, which makes sense because it makes sense to do bits in smaller pieces than in bigger pieces. But then finally, you've got this problem of you have two systems of record, right? You've got the new system, which you want to be your system of record. You've got your existing system, which also is your system of record. And you've got to find ways of keeping them both up to date. And that is just hard. and the more data that you have, so like email and RSS, that's fine because you're talking about it being unidirectional, right? Or email like is unidirectional 90% of the time. But when you're talking about this and when you're talking about making it as useful as possible and allowing that richness of interaction, then you're in the middle juggling a bunch of shit. So in my head, when you're explaining this, I get the evil thought that at some point in 5 years' time, there's like IBM BridgieFed for MQSphere running on i600.
Oh my God.
Man.
And it's not just juggling all this stuff. They're both, especially like ActivityPub and AT Proto right now, they're moving targets. They're
Yeah,
like constantly being updated. Like AT Proto still has a long way to go. Like
Yeah.
edits and private accounts, like all of this stuff is going to happen. And like, yeah, keeping up to date on one protocol is hard enough. Doing
right.
two, three is like, holy shit, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thought that I had was that so there's a number of places where this could appear to happen from a user's point of view, right? One of which might be at the client layer. Like
Mhm.
I and this was the other thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about Facebook turning off their APIs, is that Facebook didn't turn off the APIs for corporate social applications. They didn't turn them off for the ones that marketing agencies and ad agencies are using to cross post to a whole bunch of different properties. Those are still up, and then the they are the several $1,000 per seat versions of TweetDeck or whatever, right? Like those still kept working. Um, so you might see it, someone might see a platform independent view from their client. But to do it at the platform layer, to do it at to do an interoperability layer is the other thing, like to what Ted you were talking about earlier, that's also more invisible.
Yeah.
They're kind of like they're different kinds of abstraction and different kinds of invisibility.
Yep.
One of the reasons why I think that I wouldn't say that you're being forced to play with Lego at this layer, is that the toys have been put away at the client layer, right? We don't have that, Cory Doctorow would go on about like how we don't have API access, how we can't build our own clients for any of this, which is why, again, there's all this interest in ActivityPub and the interest in AppProto. So it's interesting to kind of like for people to understand the difference between, okay, well, here's how we might unify social networks. They might look unified to you, right? Because you're using a client that pulls everything into a universal inbox, which I remember reading about in Byte magazine in 1990, and that never happened. Or we could have it at the protocol, or we could have it like at the network layer, which was also a big deal in our lifetimes because it was like, oh right, I can use my mobile phone to call people on other networks now.
Yeah.
It's not just my network, or like billing minutes can be transparent across networks now.
Let me quarrel with you for 1 second on this.
Yes, we're supposed to fight.
Yeah, which is, I don't think that the client thing is entirely dead, right? And there are, I mean, like Sid.social is an example of a tool that's really trying to use the web browsing interface in order to affect or implement reach an implementation into people's social accounts. And so the fact that the web exists is really important.
Yeah.
And other things have operated through this, including what the markup did with their analysis, or sorry, not the markup. This is Laura Adelson's PhD work and being able to get Facebook ads and actually classify them.
Oh, yeah.
That used a browsing extension, right? And being able to actually look at the content that people were seeing and being able to automate that stuff. So like, I want to mention that because like, it's mostly closed, but it's not completely closed, and it's not completely closed because the open web exists. And why I think that's important is that some of these things that you're talking about, Dan, are actually intentional product choices about architecture, right?
Yes,
including some of the things that the Blue Sky NetProto team has talked about, rather than like say everybody going to secure scuttlebutt.
Bless you, Ryan.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's interesting. Ryan actually just put out a couple of blog posts over the last couple of weeks, literally about how clients can adapt to Bridgefed without having to wait for platforms and different ways that we're thinking about identity across networks. Yeah. So, Ryan, do you want to speak to that a little bit around like bridging identity using like account links and like doing mappings and all that kind of stuff? I think this is kind of like we've been a lot more focused on the infrastructure side and things like Bounce, but we've had a lot of client-facing applications approach us and be like, what can we do better? And this is kind of the start of our conversation with not just the platforms or like building the infrastructure, but helping clients just like clean up this kind of messy, hackish solution that already exists.
Yeah. You all were talking about how kind of once you try to expand your visibility and access across networks, it's both very visible since things are different, but also it's the infrastructure that does that is kind of invisible. And for a long time, the one sense of doing this bridging I've thought of is like, it's plumbing. Like it's not an end user facing UI or application. I don't want people to have to use, it's not a multi-protocol client. It should just be that in Blue Sky, like normal, suddenly you can see some Fediverse people, some blogs, and vice versa, right? And so on the one hand, we like that. We try to lean into that. We think it buys us a lot and buys kind of people, do what they already know. Like some of my favorite experiences in Anuja's too is when we see kind of big, rich conversations in one place between bridge people, and they have no idea the people who they're talking with are on Blue Sky instead of Mastodon. It's just a conversation. It's great. Love it.
Happened to
That
me
has happened to
multiple
me.
times.
Yeah,
Many
so
times.
good.
I'll be talking to someone, I'll like go to follow them because I'm like, oh, this person's cool. I'll like go to their profile and there'll be like that bridged thing in their profile, and I'll be like, oh my God. Like I would have never, because they're using like custom domains, like they're doing the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? And so you're just holy crap.
This is like early usage of BBS, right? Like that first time when you get on a BBS and be talking to someone like, oh my God, you're from America.
Right. Yeah,
You're in a
yeah.
different country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is great. On the other hand, we've also been thinking about like when we think of bridging as this 80% hack, and it's always like the character limits are always a little different, and this one lets you post 6 pictures, this one's only 4, so you lose the extra 2. There's a bunch of types of context collapse. Like again, Dan, I know you think about this stuff a lot, and you're absolutely right. So there are ways that clients and platforms can be bridge aware, be kind of aware of this stuff and improve that and get it to help us get it to 85, 90%, And so one example is we talk about cross-posting versus bridging, and this is one of the blog posts we put out recently. They seem pretty similar, like if you use a cross-protocol client versus if you bridge your accounts. Like either way, when you post, the post ends up on both networks, right? Blue Sky and Fediverse. A key difference, though, is if you cross-post and other people see the post and they reply, they're isolated, right? They're not like nothing in the set of networks knows that your 2 separate posts on the separate networks are the same thing.
Yep.
Versus when you bridge, there is that link, and we're still pretty early. There aren't like great standards for this yet, but there are at least these links, and BridgeFed knows itself. And so when people are bridged, then they see the replies from the other network and they can talk back and forth in the conversation, right? And so BridgeFed has been doing this forever, but it's not proprietary. We put these links between the posts and the people on different networks kind of in pretty standard places. They're like mostly there are standard places. Some place like Blue Sky, for example, for posts, there's no obvious place. And so we have our own little fields, but we'd love a more standard way to do that linking. But in general, in most places, like you can use this right now, cross-posting clients can do it right now. Even normal clients, if they see, for example, like if Mastodon saw that an account was bridged and it was coming from Blue Sky, it could show, like basically a profile link, but render it with an indicator that says this isn't just a normal profile link. This is the canonical source. Like this is where this person lives over here. You're seeing a bridged version, and it's not too different from when you're looking at a remote profile in Mastodon. You're looking at someone's profile and they happen to be from a different instance, and it has that open original profile link or whatever. But there are little things that the ecosystem can start doing to be more aware of this stuff and improve the experience. Another one we think about is in a cross-posting client. If you see the bridge version and it's truncated or something, the client can know, like you can go see the full text over here. Or the client could always just prefer to show the original version. Yeah. So there's a bunch of kind of baby steps where we don't need to come up with some new standard. We don't need to like force DIDs into ActivityPub, do this hard stuff. Like, let's just go pick the low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah, that's the big one, right? Like the low hanging fruit of. I think the Mastodon of Blue Sky one is interesting because you have these 500 character posts showing up on a 300 character limit. In the response itself, we send the whole post. So a client could just pull that, show the whole thing, even if Blue Sky themselves doesn't natively support that.
Yeah.
And these like low-hanging fruits, these baby steps can actually show if users care about the stuff in the first place or if it doesn't matter to them. And if it does matter to them, then it's like, okay, then we can be like, oh shoot, ActivityPub does need DIDs, right? And then you can like double down, triple down, and like make sure it actually happens at the very, very native level. But we can test out a lot of these ideas on the client side without having to like spend the next 10 years in standards discussions, right? Because I mean that it's good that these discussions exist. They have to exist, right?
Right.
But like you spend 10 years and then on the other side the users are like, oh, I actually didn't want that in the first place, right? So like doing
Right.
these client side changes are these really quick wins that we can try out with and see what happens there.
And they're complementary in terms of the standards body side. One of the better descriptions of just like a way to put together standards is not to come up with something in a vacuum, but to what they call pave the cow paths. Let's look at what people are doing ad hoc and kind of try to formalize that and
Right.
help everyone, help grow that kind of ad hoc interrupt that's already happening.
Yeah, standardization by documentation.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was we had a great conversation at Atmosphere about context collapse, and I kind of want to build on something that Ted and I talked about last time, or maybe a time before, about what Black Sky have been doing with their own PDSs, and that I see that Rudy has posted about, and that you are also doing, because we're talking about migrating data between PDSs and what that actually means. That opens up a whole kind of worms, like, Blue Sky, for example, talking about using a different PDS or another PDS. And I think the vast majority of users right now not really caring, not really knowing, and the risk, I think, and we've probably talked to Rudy about this, that Blue Sky, the PBC, runs the risk of de-emphasizing and making non-Blue Sky PBC PDSs like not very good, or something that you should be worried about, or something that you shouldn't trust. Which, that's an entirely different thing. You make your own decision about what you should trust or not. So there is that. We were talking about Black Sky and the kind of things that Black Sky and Rudy have been building as coming out of the needs of a particular community. So I'm interested in, when you look at bridging and when you're looking at the users who want bridging or are bridging curious, whether there are also the people who say, yes, I want to, like, I have groups of people in different places and I want to be able to talk to them, but not to others, and how far the kind of thinking has gotten there on, but I do want to bridge, but I want the equivalent of bridging this group on this platform here with this group on this platform here, but not for it to be completely public. Like, how might I even have some sort of control over that, and how might that look?
Yeah, I think that's kind of similar to how ActivityPub has like right now a lot of it is block lists where
Yeah.
I don't want these instances, but we are starting to see this rise of like, no, I'm going to explicitly opt into these instances or these servers or these platforms. Two good examples, and this is weird to say now, but Threads is a good example of this, where they have opted into specific ones rather than saying everything except, right? Ghost is another good example. In fact, they've taken it a step further where they have a switch for Blue Sky, which uses BridgieFed, but then they have Threads as separate, even though it's a Fediverse platform, and by default, technically they should be federating with them by default. They've said, no, you don't actually talk to Threads unless you explicitly want to, right? So we're starting to see that on like the Fediverse side. It's something that we've discussed on the BridgieFed side as well, of like doing the block list that you see on either side, or allow lists on either side. So yeah, I think that's important. And then there's the other side too, right? Of showing where people are coming from. So you can be like, oh, you know what? I hate this platform or the people that run this platform. I am seeing someone from there now. They are opted into my instance. Like, get rid of them. I don't want them.
Right.
So there's like a mixture of things that we can do, but then there's some stuff that client developers can do as well, just to be like, hey, this person's coming from Blue Sky, and then immediately the person's like, I actually don't want this person anymore. So yeah, no, it's something I think that we should do. I think there's already platforms out there that we can take inspiration from, but that's like a whole other set of projects that we'd have to work on to get there. Ryan, you've been thinking about this stuff for a while too, right?
Yeah. No, I love the idea of kind of decoupling communities from protocols or
Yeah.
platforms. Like, you should be able to talk to just your knitting circle, like, and not have to care about, or is everyone in my knitting circle on Mastodon? Is everyone in my knitting circle on this Blue Sky PDS? I think in the Fediverse, the culture is just like everything, like all of your experience is really driven by which instance you join, where your account is.
Yeah.
Blue Sky has tried much harder to say, PDS is much more like, I don't know, where you store your files online.
Stuff is on. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's infrastructure. It's not a definition of a community.
Right.
I think Blue Sky is much earlier in like, okay, what is the definition of a community on Blue Sky at a technical level?
Right.
I think we mostly don't know yet, and Rudy is figuring it out more than the company themselves, which is fine.
Which is good,
I think we would.
Yeah, we need other people thinking about other stuff. And that's the cool thing, right? I was posting about Black Sky on Mastodon, and people were very confused because like they don't like the stackable nature of AT Proto is just very different than how ActiveView. So to them it was like, so everyone's leaving Blue Sky for how can I find this other app? And it's like, no, well, and then you like dive into the archive and they're like, it blows their mind. And it's like then you explain to them how Black Sky started as just like a custom feed and moderation stack.
Yeah.
And they've slowly been developing each layer of the stack as time goes on. And it like, there's some people where they're like, oh, that's like they don't understand it. They don't care. They're like, I like my instance. That's cool. And then there's other people that are like, oh, you've separated the instance from the community, from the moderation. And it like clicks for them very quickly. So what Rudy's doing is not just something really cool for his community and just for like the protocol in general.
Yeah.
I think it's helping click for a lot of people that don't care or haven't wanted to care for a long time about why this stackable nature matters. And it's that like Black Sky started inside Blue Sky.
Yeah, they were incubated. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It is piecemeal taking itself out, right? And it's what Rudy's doing, I think, is proving what Blue Sky has been trying to say since the beginning, in a very like organic and demonstrable way of like, this is how you can build out your platform one by one. It's super cool. Yeah, super cool.
I think one of the interesting challenges around that is and I always talk about skeuomorphism and kind of joke about this being like anamorphic art, and like the legibility problem I think that you're implicitly talking about is really hard. And this is a thing that, Aaron Kassane introduced at AtmosphereConf, and being able to say like, no, look, we could start a thing inside of another thing is the thing that I think hurts people's brains, and be like, but it's not the same. And you're like, there was this like arguing about the Trinity or something like that. I'll have to find this other post. And figuring out when to introduce people to these concepts, I think, is really an interesting and challenging part about talking about the landscape. And like, in one sense, y'all are making it harder. But also, you're presenting the opportunities to actually have these conversations. And like, does it come up when y'all are talking about the work that you're trying to do with other people? And like, I think it's interesting that you talk about how Black Sky moving out has helped this to resonate. But like, the mental model thing is so hard for people, and getting them to care.
No, it's easy.
And when to care.
It's easy. I figured it out.
Thank God someone did.
All right. Okay. It's species and individual reproduction, and then it's individuation until you're into a separate species that can't reproduce with the original species.
Easy.
Incubate you incubate inside the original host until it can survive on its own outside the environment, but it's still a member of the same species, so that they can still reproduce together. They can still make new ones, but at some point it might individuate so much that it can't with the parent species.
Okay. Darwinism. The answer is Darwinism.
No, you completely took the wrong.
You missed the whole point,
Ted.
No. Yeah.
It sounds like a blog post waiting to happen. I would read that.
I was gonna say, I was like, I feel like you need to put this in writing and with a bunch of diagrams, and then you're probably just gonna end up in the same place as everyone else has when they try to explain it.
But it's, I think Ted, your point about like, as people are learning kind of how decentralized social works, like when do you introduce which ideas is interesting. It also kind of assumes it assumes you're starting at kind of one place. And I think we got that in a lot from the Fediverse, which is this kind of federation idea where everything is tied to your instance, like
Yeah.
your identity, because server's in your handle, your functionality. I mean, you can't do events on Mastodon. Your moderation, your affinity group, and only one affinity group because it's just the one instance. And yeah, when you start with that and live in that mental model for many years, it makes it harder to like see other mental models. But I don't know that that's the right one to start at. I think about learning programming in universities. Often they would start with Java or Python or something, but MIT famously forever started with Lisp, which is functional and not imperative. And it's just like you have a very different experience of learning to program if you start with a functional language versus if you start with an imperative language, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, well said. Um,
Well, maybe what we're talking about here, to extend the analogy, is like biomimicry to some extent too. And like we're talking about which things we're replicating and where is it going to matter or not, and where you get jammed on weird parts of this. And I think the framing. I mean, Paul Graham famously wrote. What was the essay that he wrote about programming languages and going the other direction? Because Paul Graham, of course, famously Lisp dude. That's the only that's how I was initially introduced to him. So to be clear, his ANSI Common Lisp book actually good. Haven't read Painters and Programmers and whatever the rest of his writing, but the blub paradox is really what he was talking about, and the notion of trying to get people over these humps. And that essay was like low key like, actually a bunch of people aren't going to get it, so fuck all of them. And that's like, again, if you're talking about societies and civilizations, maybe not the road you want to go down. And the parts of, I think, how we incrementally introduce people to these concepts is like the exciting part, actually, of thinking about distributed social media and where we can make these features and concepts relevant to them as they're doing their work, or as they're interacting with these systems and trying to interact with other people in these networks. Right?
Yeah, I also think there's...
No, Anish, go ahead.
Sure. I also think that there's like this idea of like, oh, they don't need to know, they don't need to care is one thing. But to me, it's when you're trying to explain these problems to people, I think they just kind of get lost with all of the different concepts. The way that I've seen this stuff works is when they really need a specific feature, specific functionality, being able to like sit down with them and be like, this is how it works. And I think this thing that Black Sky's doing with the PDS migrations is really good because he's reached out to specific folks. He's sent invite codes to specific folks. He's very publicly migrating them. And then he's showing that their handle is changing and that you can still interact with them. Their profile page still looks the same. And you can see people in the thread being like, oh, I was afraid I was like these people were leaving Blue Sky, but now you've shown me that they are still on Blue Sky, they're still interoperating. How do I get in on this? I want to be a part of this community, right? And stay a part of Blue Sky at the same time. And so I feel like introducing people when they have either a problem or see a benefit of using one of these features or whatever, introducing to them in that moment matters a lot more than trying to explain to them like the whole ecosystem and how it works all at once. It's that need that I think strikes people to like want to learn and educate themselves about these topics. So it's okay. Like I always say this, it's like, this is the long game. We don't have to explain everything to everyone and be like, this is the benefits. It's I'm pissed off at Blue Sky because they banned this person. And it's like, well, they didn't ban this person. They're still on the fire hose. If you go here,
this is how you
actually, right? Or if you use this client or you migrate to this PDS or you migrate to this app view, then you're going to be able to see this person that you think has been banned from the whole network. Like they're not. It's just in this specific context. And if you still want that stuff or you don't like the way they've handled the situation, here's how you go
There's
here.
a way to
here's
do
what
that.
it means for you. And look, you can still talk to everyone here. It's just now you have this extra layer of people that Blue Sky or whoever else didn't allow on their platform, right? So I think it's okay. I don't think everyone needs to understand this stuff overnight, but when you see someone in need, that's when you're like, hey, I got you. Like, let me explain this to you now. I think that matters a lot.
I think there's another way of looking at that, which is that sometimes the need to be able to explain these things to people is because of a desire to see a platform grow. Like it does these things, so I would like you to be here. Like check this place out because it is better than the other places, or it does things. Or if you only have a finite amount of time, I would rather you spend your time on a more open network than a more closed network. So that's how I'm going to try and so that might be how I maybe misguidedly try and make my pitch to you. One thing that I was thinking about was I don't know how much or how even relevant it is whether we have the mental models for the types of structure and the types of portability that it turns out that we care about in practice, but we don't really encounter. So one of the examples would be something like phone number portability, right? When people suddenly realize, hey, I've had this phone number for quite a while. It feels like it's mine. I shouldn't have to change it. Like, this is my thing. I've been paying for it.
Yep.
Everyone knows me by it, but I want to use a different service provider. So I should be able to do that. Why can't I do that? And I think one of the nice things about it is it's all just computers. Can't computers do things anyway? Just make the computer do it. And we're like, yes, we should.
Yeah.
And we haven't had that, like email portal. So specifically because you're bringing up identity, right, on the Mastodon, on ActivityPub, or rather the Mastodon specific implementation of ActivityPub is like your identity is tied there. We talked about this before. You leave your stuff behind when you go, right? So it satisfies the part of you've got data portability because you can take it with you, but no one else can see it anymore unless you do something else with it. Like,
but you don't have data portability because you can't import it back in, really.
Right.
Like all of it with Mastodon,
Sure.
right? Because like all of the previous links are going dead.
Right.
And you could create new records, but those are not the, like, from the web's perspective, the same records. Right.
And I will add, you don't have identity portability either. And that is a Fediverse ActivityPub thing, not just Mastodon, because everything is URLs and the server host name is just inextricably a part of every actor and every object, and that is one of the top few reasons the Blue Sky team eventually said, no, we're not using ActivityPub because we want actual identity portability,
Yeah.
And that always seems to technically, so from a technical point of view, that always just seems to come down to you're going to need a bunch of directory servers.
Complicated. Yeah, complicated. We can argue about that. And actually, I mean, maybe we should talk about identity at some point and have an episode about identity. But I mean, the thing I wanted to loop this back around on is how we talk, the sets of expectations, right? Like the fact that people are like, no, this phone number is my phone number is like really interesting in comparison to the way that people think about social accounts and their them being functionally the platform owners, really.
No, but they don't. The number of people.
No, but the platform owners.
Oh yes,
do
yes, the platform owners do, right? But the number of times when I bet every single person here has had an instance where someone they know has gotten locked out of an Instagram account, and then at some point there's like, do you know anyone at Facebook who can help me?
Yeah.
Right. Like, can you find I need someone who can use the internal employee tool to help me with this with this Instagram thing.
Yeah.
Or Twitter just selling people's handles.
Yeah.
Or X rather, selling people's handles. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing that I think is interesting about this is playing with the expectations, the fact that phone numbers, I mean, that happened partly through industry changing, but also partly through legislation, right? And there are efforts within our current era to do some of this stuff. And so like mandating interoperability between phone messengers is, RCS, right? It's a thing that's happening. And so like maybe we won't have the green blue bubble problem at some point in the future. We're not quite there yet, but like it's happening. And the EU has been mandating that social platforms can interoperate. And like that's the crazy part about this particular moment. And the fact that like there is legislation about this and regulations. Has it happened? No, it fucking hasn't happened. And Threads allowing you to federate is not quite like, it feels like a half measure to me, I guess is the way that I would put it.
It's interesting though. I mean, Anuja and I are on this Signal group chat about there is a law in Utah that, Anuja, am I right? The first version of it passed that does require interop between different social networks, and there are a bunch of details and they're working on revising it. But for a while it was just EU and DMA, DSA, but we are seeing it in other places, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it shakes out.
And it's not just interoperability, it's the portability part too, because I think that's the major one that at the end of the day, people tend to care way more about. So yeah, we're starting to see that pop up a lot more.
Yeah. So y'all are getting prepared is what you're saying.
In a way, right? we're Bridge Fed is protocol based, and a lot of these platforms that you'd want to interoperate with and have portable identity on are currently not. So it'll be interesting to see how those organizations specifically move, like how they choose to interoperate and how they choose to like enter that. Because and this is a conversation Ryan and I have a lot, is like I don't want there to be I don't think it's the right approach just to say like this is the protocol everybody has to use, and if you're
Yeah.
not using this protocol, get with the program. Like this is the way we're doing things. Because we've seen even just between ActivityPub and AT-Proto, the fact that these two things exist next to each other and are in competition has like forced people's hand to be like, okay, I do have to build this a different way, or I do have to add this feature before it's too late, right? So yeah, I'm interested to see where a lot of this goes as far as the legal
Yep.
side of things. Yeah.
Mhm.
It is time for me to disappear. I'm
Cool.
Yeah, I
afraid.
wish we had you longer. Like I would, I'd love to ask
Yeah.
you a lot more questions on like how should we do this and that and the other in the bridge and how should things work. But I appreciate you all having us on.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you
really
so
appreciate
much.
it. A lot of fun chatting, and thank you for being our first double challenger set.
Oh, were we? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Happy to
Tag
do
team.
it again.
We
Yeah,
love
thanks for
being
having
here.
us.
This, yeah, it's
Yeah.
great that you all do this.
Yeah.
All right.